everybody. It's Thursday, December 10th, 2020, and this is a special meeting of the Audit Committee. So I'll call to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Go ahead, Warnie.
Anyone?
Let's see. Committee member Grant?
Here.
Committee member Horvath?
Here.
Committee member Deals?
Here.
And committee member Manzano?
Here.
And Chairman Brand.
Here. Thank you, Marnie. We got a flag. We'll do the salute. Otherwise, we'll. Oh, there it is. All right. Let's salute the flag, folks. Okay. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
and justice for all. Okay. Thanks, everybody. So, approval of order of agenda. Is anybody have any objections to the order of agenda? Okay, so ordered. Blue folder items. Do we have any blue folder items, Marnie?
No, we don't.
Okay, great. Consent calendar. We only have 2 items. Is there anyone from the public wants to comment on the consent calendar?
No. Doug, we don't have any, right? You're on.
No.
There are none.
We have the phone number again.
That's
We'll have to obviously
That's Deals.
be able to check that because we're going to have to check it again very soon. Is there anybody who wants to pull any item from consent calendar? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved. Second.
Motion by member Horvath, second by member Grand. Is there any objection to approving the consent calendar? Okay, so ordered. Moving right along. Public participation on non-agenda items. Is there anyone from the public who would like to participate on non-agenda items not related to anything on the agenda?
And yeah, just to let the public know, they can raise their hand by *9, and then also if you're on the phone, or and *6 to unmute.
I see someone's on the phone. I see a 714 number, an attendee.
See.
No one, they're not raising their hand. No
Not
one.
raising their hands, so okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Moving right along then. Are there any comments? We got comments from the public. Is there, I don't know what this item. I guess we don't have any, so we'll move on. Okay. Sorry.
No e-comments. I have no e-comments here.
Okay. Great. So J1, discussion and possible action regarding the annual financial reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. Marnie, you going to give us a brief report? Or?
I will. Good afternoon. We've completed our audit for fiscal year 1920, and you have in your packets the resulting reports, which include the CAFR, the report on the inmate trust fund, and then the financial statements for the enterprise funds and the internal service funds. The single audit report is not in your packet because OMB has not yet finished their guidelines regarding COVID expenditures. So once those come out, we'll be able to finish up that report and get it to you at a later date. The reports you have today are drafts because at the time the agenda packet was put together, we still had one outstanding attorney response letter we were waiting for. We've since received that letter, and the reports that are going to be in the City Council agenda packet will be final. There's no difference between the draft reports and the final reports, except that you won't have the big watermark saying draft. And then the good news is these reports come to you with a clean audit opinion. The auditors had no findings this year. So Brian Gruber from Lance Soul and Lunghard, or LSL, is here with us today. And so I'll turn it over to him. He can tell you more about the audit itself and then the resulting reports.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Marnie. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members.
Welcome, Brian.
Yeah, good to see you guys again. A little bit about the audit process this year. LSL has been engaged by the city to conduct a financial statement audit for the year ended June 30, 2020, and also to assist in putting together the comprehensive annual financial report that's been provided for you today. Management is ultimately responsible for what goes into the financial statements, and us as auditors are responsible to express an opinion on those financial statements that they've been prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So consistent principles across, other city and local government agencies. And then also that the numbers and the information in them can be relied upon in all material respects. So as a reader to the financial statement, you can have confidence that the numbers and the disclosures in there are accurately presented. To be able to form our opinion, we go through a process with complying with professional standards, which involves us obtaining an understanding or following up on our understanding of the city's internal controls and policies and procedures. We did that this year in the month of May, before the fiscal year end closed. This year worked well with Marnie and her team, remotely, and a lot of work on staff sending us all of our requests and laundry of information that we wanted from them. So we're appreciative for them helping out with that. But we followed up on the internal controls and any changes, any modifications. Also looked at any changes in procedures as a result of COVID this year and how that might impact the audit and the results. We completed a risk assessment and followed up on our risk assessment of changes that had occurred and natural risks that occur in city governments, and put together an audit program for us to come back for the final phase of our audit, which we did in September-October timeframe. Important procedures that we do there, or we send out, for example, confirmations out to, the city's banking and financial institutions, other third parties that have financial their financial relations with the city, and confirm with them the amounts that are being reported in the financials. We do other tests, pull backup and supporting documentation, and do a series of analytical comparisons and procedures to render our opinion. The results of our audit have been completed. We got the final pieces, as Marnie mentioned, the final attorney confirmation, and have dated our reports and provided you our auditor opinion, which is the essence of what you hired us to do, is to complete an opinion. So we express what's referred to as an unmodified opinion by professional standards, and in simple terms, what that means is that the information in the financial statements can accurately be relied upon and that it's accurate in all material respects and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Also included, we do complete an audit for the city's CAFR, and we do a separate audit and issue an opinion for the inmate trust fund. We do a separate audit funds as well. We look at those funds separately. And what that means is we develop a separate materiality and a separate scope and procedures looking at those funds individually rather than in context of the city as a whole. In conjunction with our audit by professional standards and governmental auditing standards, we issue communication to the City Council related to auditing requirements for communication of audit findings, internal control deficiencies. We're required by professional standards to communicate if something's to the level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency in that structure. We're required to communicate that to you, and we noted no findings, no issues in that area. Along with that is we're required to communicate if we identify instances of non-compliance with laws, regulations, grant award agreements, for example. We noted no instances of non-compliance. And also we are required to communicate to you if we have difficulties in conducting the audit. For example, maybe staff are failing to provide information or not being responsive or those type of matters. We noted no instances there. If we had a disagreement with regard to accounting procedure or accounting philosophy for the financial statements, we would communicate that to you here, and we didn't have any findings in that area. We also required to communicate to you any other matters related to significant estimates or impacts to the financial statement, nothing unusual there. And finally, changes in accounting procedure. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board decided this year to defer implementation of new standards due to the pandemic going on. So we went ahead and some standards are going to get moved to next year for the implementation. That, in summary, kind of highlights the key elements of our audit process and results. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Are you coming on Tuesday to the council meeting to answer questions as well?
I will be there. Yep.
Excellent.
And the Budget and Finance Commission tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. We have plenty of time to pour through this and hear their comments and read it and everything. So I haven't read it yet. So thank you, though. One question I have: how many cities do you guys audit this past year?
It's approximately, I don't have the exact number, but it's about 50 to 60 city governments that we audit across the state.
So you've done a lot of these for different cities yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I would say city governments are probably, there's a variety of governmental agencies and we audit them all, including counties, special districts, right? Those, but cities are really kind of our special focus for our firm. So.
How would you rank Redondo Beach in a city of a similar size from what you've seen in terms of our reserves and our overall financial condition? Cities vary. It really varies by city, to be totally honest. Difficult to kind of put an exact, pinpoint on a letter grade, for example. There are cities that have 200% reserves of expenses, their annual operating expenses. And then there's cities that have 10% or less, So, that's one way you could look at it. There's a lot of different ways, I guess, that you can kind of look at it. And it also kind of depends on revenue sources too, fluctuations and changes in revenue sources and time when you receive those revenue sources too. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there's a variety of different, ways to evaluate it, I guess. Sure. Okay. Are there any questions from the panelists? I don't see any hands up.
No, but I'll just say thank you to Marnie and staff and Doug. I appreciate the draft copy and being able to go through that on paper versus digital, because even though I love the virtual world, it's always nice to just see everything on paper. And thank you as always for just being extremely thorough, and thank you, Brian, for your continued service over the past few years. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Yeah, I don't know that I received a paper copy. I may have did show up in your
I requested one, Bill. I just
requested one. Yeah,
Yeah, and
I'm like you. I like to see, especially a report like this on paper. Just, I guess it's a ease of use preference. Used to. Can I get a copy, Eleanor? Maybe just.
Or yeah, Marnie will
You
get.
can do that, sure.
Yeah, I printed one for me. That's because it's just so.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say something. Just that. I mean, it looks great. I mean, you guys did a great job, and you know, the department. I know finance. It's always a lot of work to get all this stuff done and taken care of. You know, I noticed that the revenues decreased a little, and the expenditures increased. But then, you know, it's sort of status quo. Where I'm sort of curious to see what's going to happen for next year. That's going to be the big, you know, area of decreases in revenues, and probably the expenditures maybe decrease, or maybe the same. So that's my, you know, just my point. I guess that's it. Thank you.
One more question.
This year just had 1 quarter of the pandemic. And
Yeah.
a lot more in the current fiscal year.
Yeah, exactly. Which is noted, which I saw that it is noted on the back of the notes related to the COVID, which was good.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Sure. So, Marnie, the amount that we had left over, that we left unallocated, aside from the 30,000 that we put towards public works, was that based on the findings here?
It was preliminary, and so we do round down a bit when we provide you the numbers in November, because they're not quite final. So the number you see in the CAFR for the general fund is about $300,000 higher.
Sweet, even better. So we were about 800 grand over what we thought, 850, something like that, or at least I did estimate.
Yeah, we were figuring about 500, and it is 800.
Terrific. That's great news. Again, it's we're calculating things as we were going into the pandemic and things were shutting down, and I know that when we start to look from July 1st on, it's going to be a little bit more severe. But thank you. It's really nice to see. So great. Thank you.
Brian, one more question. Sometimes it's hard to compare apples to apples, and when you're looking at reserve funds, you know, we have like our PERS reserve fund, which isn't typically calculated as part of a reserve, or is it? So I guess on a percentage basis, when you look at our numbers, what percentage of our expenses would you say that we have sitting in reserves? You know, 15%, 20%? Is that something you calculated?
It is something that we calculate.
And do you include our PERS reserve fund?
We do. We would include all funds that are not classified as that non-spendable category or restricted category. You do have funds that are committed for a contingency of, you ended the year, the general fund at $7.5 million. You do have the CalPERS, which is assigned for $6.5 million. So those assignments are kind of viewed as more, I guess in an audit world, I guess is more flexible, right? You can kind of move those and reclassify those, all the way up to kind of then restricted being a lot harder, and the non-spendable kind of not being available to spend, right? So we would look at that. If you look at components of fund balance, which is on the page 34 of the general fund. And so we would include like the 700,000 for unassigned, the $6.5 million for CalPERS. And even that committed, you could make an argument that that's kind of available, worst case scenario type thing. So if you were to look at that, I mean, that's approximately, if you added all that, that's your general fund balance is $17.5 million. The annual expenditure of your general fund is $94 million. So if you did the math there,
it's like 20%.
Yeah.
Approximately. Okay.
Yeah, approximately 20%.
So that's something like our PERS reserve fund. You could be looking at another city's reserve percentage, and if they don't have a PERS reserve fund, then they would just be going off what they're holding. I mean, that's kind of a special fund we set aside. It is a special fund we set aside.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a good thing we did.
No, absolutely.
It's a good thing we have pretty much all these separate funds because they actually save our butts quite a bit when it comes to a lot of the programs we're able to do on a year-to-year basis.
Yes.
Well, those are the real flexible ones, right? The PERS reserve fund, the carryover, and the
Vehicle replacement fund.
charter required. Well, yeah, the vehicle replacement fund, but don't most cities have those? Do you calculate vehicle replacement funds when you're looking at reserve funds?
So are we referring to, there's a couple different ways, like sometimes cities will hold some of those funds in the general fund, and then other times they're set aside in internal service funds.
Right.
And so, in essence, kind of those internal service funds, like you have a vehicle replacement internal service fund. So I don't know if you're referring to those types of funds.
Yeah, when I go to compare apples to apples, cities to cities, some cities have what you just described, some don't. And when I ask you in terms of...
So like your vehicle replacement, you have about $8.5 million in cash in there in your internal service fund. So some of these, maybe Marnie should talk because maybe I'm saying things that are not correct sometimes. What you...
No, that's okay. I mean, we're familiar with some of the bigger numbers. I was just asking how to classify this in terms of when we talk about how much reserve funds we have compared to other cities. That's
yeah. So I would definitely, like when we look at financial health kind of factors, we definitely calculate those internal service fund cash reserves that you have in those, because obviously they're designated for a purpose and you do need them for those purposes, right?
Yeah.
You need to replace vehicles, but it is cash, right? So
At the end of the day, we can spend it.
So do you have a financial grade system that you can classify us in?
Once is great.
Are we an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F?
You're definitely not an F. You're definitely not an F. I mean, yeah, probably like in the B category. I mean, if you were to get critical, maybe you could say a C if you wanted to get critical.
Okay, no, that gives us a good idea.
Yeah,
everybody knows what A, B, and F is.
Yeah, and it's probably not good to refer to a CAFRA in that way, probably. But I don't know. If you put me on the spot, that's what I'd say.
Just to be clear, this is not a financial health audit. This is an audit of our financials. And it's not a policy audit. You want to understand what it is we're talking about here. The last time we had a comparison among other cities was when they had the county comparison, and they compared all the cities, and we got a very good grade. But from my perspective, if you want to talk financial health, as Eleanor pointed out, spending is up and revenues are down. And you'll notice when I do present the quarterly report that we've been unable to invest in any new securities for the entire length of the portfolio. So our investment portfolio is shrinking. So the question to me is not just what is the balance of our reserves, but what's the trend in the balance of our reserves? And if the investment portfolio is any indication, the trend is down. And as Marnie pointed out, we've only had one quarter in this particular fiscal year of the effects of the pandemic. But
Yeah,
again,
it's
this is not a financial audit.
It's kind of irrelevant now, given the situation. But it is a snapshot.
Right.
But it's kind of, well, yeah, exactly, Steve. It's kind of useless at this point, but it's important. So. Okay, any more comments, questions, anybody? All right. Well,
I think the takeaway is that you can trust the financials as a fair representation as audited, that they reflect what they say they do. And I think that's the main takeaway.
That is the main takeaway. Correct. Thank you.
How often, Brian, do you issue a qualified opinion?
It's rare. It's probably 5% maybe. And an instance where you would qualify an opinion, it could be because maybe records don't exist to support maybe amounts and disclosures. And so we cannot form an opinion on it, right? So you say, I have $1 million in vehicles, but you don't have any records to support it. That would be an instance of why we might qualify the opinion. If the records are in disarray and not able to be audited, or items have not been corrected in the financial statement that should be corrected to be able to render those opinions in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So those would be instances where we would qualify an opinion. So meaning we can't form an opinion. That's really what a qualification is, or we disagree with, because it's not in accordance with accounting principle or supported or that kind of thing.
And usually in one particular area of your...
It's usually in one particular area. Yeah, it wouldn't be like everything's wrong.
I think we had a qualified opinion in a very small way one year. I think it was 6 or 7 years ago. But I think it was in our enterprise fund or something. It was fixed. It was some minor thing. So. Yeah.
Marnie might be able to speak to that.
Yeah, it was still a clean opinion because it was presented in the financial statements correctly. It was simply pointed out in the audit communication letter that the auditors needed to point it out to us, but that it had been fixed. So it was still a clean opinion because you could still rely on the financial statements.
So like that, when I said there was no deficiencies or material corrections or whatever, because sometimes we could go in and the statements could be wrong, for example, but it might require a material correction. So that's when we would inform you of those material corrections. And so usually that's where I say 90, even higher than probably 95% of the time, an opinion is formed. And it's unmodified.
Okay, well, thank you,
But
Brian.
it does happen. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's important, right? It's like if you said, "Oh no, we never issue a qualified opinion." Well, wait a minute.
No, it happens, and usually everybody's well aware that. I mean, it happens.
Sure.
City council and staff and everybody. So.
Okay, are there any member items and referrals to staff? So next thing. Thank you, Brian, again, and Marnie, and everybody put all this work into this, and Doug, I really appreciate it. And people not here, there's a lot of people on this, so
It takes a lot. Yep.
please pass the thanks along, Marnie.
Sure will.
Nice to get a sneak peek at it, though. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah. And you can put one in my box for me, Eleanor? Maybe over the
And
weekend.
actually, Marnie will.
We will do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. That was pretty painless.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Second.
Second. Okay, a motion and a second. Is there any objection to us adjourning? Okay, so ordered. We're adjourned, and have a good night, everybody. Be safe.
Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
work, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
again.
Thanks, Marnie.